Ooh. Ooh. Auga. All right. Holy shit. Am I prepared for this? I don't know if I am. Maybe after my first mug of coffee, I will be prepared for this. Maybe that'll do it. Ooh. Perhaps. Hexagons. Dropping frames. Chill. It's good. Alright, seems to have just been a hiccup. So yes. We're making hexagons. There are no hexagons on the screen. However, I have implemented a tri-axial positioning system, so I can increment the position up to the right, up, and up to the left. Along the hexagonal... No, right, up to the right and up to the left. And I think it works correctly. Right now the hexagons are point to the side. And I think I want it that way. I think that's better aesthetically for drawing like little things, like little mountains and stuff on the tiles themselves. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to set up a world that we then can draw. So I'm drawing out some grass. So this is good enough. This is good enough, I think. Now we need to initiate a draw. Here we have a sprite batch, but basically we have a grid matrix that needs to take a sprite batch, a game time. Now the question is, what is this doing? Nothing. And this should draw before, because this sprite batch is before, or is on top. So the grid matrix. Fetch hex content. What am I doing there? I'm fetching a list of integers. Right. This. Right. Yeah. This also. This should be. I'm not 100% sure what the plan was there. Is this just meant to be a 1D indexer? Maybe. I haven't properly... Actually, I haven't even... Let's see. There. I knew I had saved it, but yeah, this goes into content here. And in content, we should have some folders, fonts. Tile, sheets, graphics. Tile sheets. Can you not just change where it's supposed to go? Dude from project. I mean, I guess. This is so weird to me. Holy shit. And so here we're gonna load this sprite font, and it's gonna be fonts / Arial. Right. I think that worked. So public texture 2D X beat. File sheets X sheet. Right, and so drawing the grid matrix. I have to open the other projects. So I can see how I'm actually doing it. This doesn't have any access backwards. Has to be game one. All right. So. Or Y matrix dot get length 1 X Right, so it's being drawn in what position? Yes. X times 64, Y times 64. This takes the XNA framework one. Man. Basically, in our structs here, We have explicit. Public static implicit operator. That should be fine, right? Now we can implicitly convert from my vector 2 to their vector 2. So now I don't need to do this. Yeah, alright, good. Hopefully that doesn't lead to any hidden issues. Now this here... It's in globals, right? Yeah. See, I'm making a hexagon type list here. But I'm not sure, should I... Should I have, like, explicit pointers towards... hex positions here? Or not, towards tile positions here? Or should I just do it? Yeah, let's do that. It's gonna bloat it to hell, but whatever. So we have hex name. Tile sheet ID. And here we have hex position X. Or should this just be a rect? Man, I'm missing autocomplete. Like, why can't they just make the autocomplete not ass and stop changing it? And I don't even know what it was. Why can't you go to this setting? Where was I? Like here. Yeah, like I want that. But any more than that is like annoying. That's the thing. Anyway, we'll try that for a while, see how it works. Last time I was fighting to turn it off. An empty tile. Or an empty sheet. On an empty tile. I don't know if 64 is a good size. I think it might be the size. It would be like this size on the screen. It's actually quite big. Wait. Didn't I just say that we had points to the left? Honestly, I don't know what I want. We can just flip it, right? Feels weird this way. That's because it is weird. What just happened? Look, this is 64 times 64. So you take that, take it down here, you rotate it. Now it's 4 here. Bro, there's no way fast rotation is that ass. Am I retarded? Oh? Anyway, whatever. I think if you do this, or if I did this, I would want to do this. I think the pointy, the standing one. I want to call this version a standing one. I think the standing one works better at a natural square. Well, if you have the points to the left, I feel like the aspect ratio is fucked. Because it feels giga stretched. I don't think that's good. Yeah. Because I actually want them to be larger than 64 times 64, because I want to be able to have things sticking up like this, you know, or mountains like this or whatever, so that they can overlap each other. So they actually need to be slightly larger, but let's just focus on drawing one of these bad boys first. And then we'll see what we do. What was that? I usually don't have that turned on, but whatever. Alright. So, I got caught up because I don't have an empty hexagon, really. We have the pink one. But let's go with pink being empty. So, all of these have biology sheet ID 0. Then we need a new rectangle. The rectangle takes an int, which is then 0, 0, 64, 64. And then that's good. We can copy this out across all of these. I kind of wish there was some kind of like Excel formatting sometimes. So you could make little, like a section here that has like a grid. Hold on. Whatever. All right. So the plane is then 64x. Water is 128. This, I wasn't planning on doing it this way, to be frank. And I think we might change it. I just want to draw something on the screen. I don't want to get too caught up in hyper-optimizing a hexagon draw. Bullshit. But basically, you shouldn't need this. Because, I mean, it really boils down to, like, end use case, right? Because if at the end of the day it boils down to, yeah, this is a plane, this is this is water, this is mountain, then they should only need an ID. You know, like grass or plane is already ID 1, and because it is ID 1, it should already be able to calculate this using, like, I shouldn't need to write this. It should just be like, yep, ID 1, that means it's at 1 times 64 up until the, like, yeah, like, you kind of get what I mean, right? Like, it's at index 1, that means this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it should just be able to just grab it via math. Because it knows that index 1 is tile size 1 to the right. All the way up until, you know, how big the tile sheets are, which will be standardized. And then it'll be like, yeah, okay, if it exceeds... I don't know how many boxes this might be. 64. So if we are at like 65, then it'll know, okay, we're now at here, and we'll just pick this one. But yeah, I don't know, we'll see. For now, let's just do this. It's just, what the fuck is 128 times 64? 192. This was supposed... I thought I had made one. I was pretty sure I had made one. Ah. There we go. I don't think we need to rebuild or anything, but we can do it anyway. Let's see. And then here, we need to fetch globals dot hexagon list matrix x, y. Dot rect. What are the odds? Right. Now we just need to shift them. So we're gonna say position and then we're gonna say x times 64, y times 64. Now, the y times 64 is simply not true. This is bugged. If y modulo 2 equals 0, else the y should always be the same, right? So what is the actual y? We just put it here. $48. Because this is 0. This is 48. Okay, so the y is 48. Oh, this is the wrong. Need to move this one over there because this is the wrong window. There. Y is 48, always. And then let's see, y modulo 2 equals 0. That means it's at 0. Otherwise, this is going to be offset by 32, I think. Now, this should actually be a vector2 int, in my opinion, for accuracy reasons. There we go. Easy. It's kind of easy, but it's not actually. We have to fix some things here. So first we have to say vector to int length equals new vector to int matrix dot get length 0, like that. But on top of that, we actually have to start at length, I believe, and we will iterate while y is greater than 0. X is greater than 0. And we will iterate down. And we actually start at -1, right? Because otherwise we'll start outside of the bounds. I don't know why that happened. I feel like that shouldn't have been an issue. It's because of this. It's not drawing the 0. There. Alright, now it's correct. And what we can do is, just to have a little fun with it, we can say if game.main. Main controller dot, I don't know. Can't access it because it's internal, I think. Right. I can never make up my mind what I want to do. Do I want to just use an accessor? Entity is less accessible. Still can't access it. Oh, no. I understand. No. It's because it needs to be static. There we go. Let's do this. Vector to int I equals new vector to length dot x, length dot y. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter, but we should say I dot y equals that. And here it's y dot x. That way we can just check if this equals I, then we will access 0, 0. It's weird. Oh no. There. Wait, it actually draws pink as transparent? I didn't know that. By default. How should we handle this? Because the issue now is that it's drawing upside down, so all the fucking logic is upside down too. Do I flip it? I wonder how people usually do it when they work in MonoGame. But like, if we do this, for example, if we draw north on all of these, it's all gonna be flipped upside down, right? No. I'm just thinking how I should approach this logically in terms of like buttons and stuff, because what this means is that as I increment, we go down. Which means that we need to just change. I guess this is mostly just about positioning. So here we have handle input, right? If we just flip these, then that logic will make sense. Kind of. No, this one shouldn't be flipped because this is X exclusively. X is not flipped. Oh, no, it's... No. It shouldn't be flipped here. It needs to be flipped in the movement vector code here. And translate. So translate Q is then negative Y. Negative Y. S. Negative Y. Negative Y. Yes, this is correct. Okay. You're not supposed to move around with the keyboard or anything like that. It's just for testing purposes. Units are supposed to move based on, like, you click over here and then it's supposed to move like a tile every few seconds in real time. All right, I'll be right back. Oh. All right. So, next two things that we need to do. Well, first of all, the screen needs to be bigger in reality, but we can leave that for later. It doesn't matter. We have to add camera control, clicking, and I'm going to change how this works real quick. Hello, ho, ho. The ribeye steak was pretty bad. I honestly don't like it that much. I'd rather just eat ground beef. It was okay, I suppose. Was okay, I suppose. Yeah. We are rendering. Get rid of that. Tile selection. Hexagons look like they progressed a lot. I saw them drawing already a moment ago. Yeah, the drawing is honestly easy, and at this point, I've drawn something in MonoGame like 4 times, so I kind of understand how to do it, especially since I can just open my old projects. So it's pretty easy. But we are able to render like the current selection. Tile selection, more or less. But let's see. Tile selection hex. Graphics tile selection. Let me run the content MGCB. Don't know what the difference between build and rebuild is, really. There, and this is now called tile selection text. I feel like I should have an entire class just for loading data. Perhaps. I don't know. I think so. I don't think putting it all in just load content in game 1 is a good idea. Actually, it probably needs to have a bunch of different ones. Like level data, unit data, like UI data, whatever. I don't know. But those could be like functions inside of one data loader class as well. But yeah, let's see. Go back to the here. Now, if we change this to instead of being an if, we then draw an extra. Right? And then we draw texture is text like that. Ta-da! Now we have a selector that just selects the edges. It's a start. Now we can do it. Let's implement a way to click now. I believe. So here we have handle input for the keyboard, which means we should delete this like now, almost. The movement vector functionality still should be there, I think, for being able to just move things around. Right now I have a position that is a vector 2 int, but it actually needs to be a vector 2 with floats, because I want objects to be able to walk and like transition smoothly on the map, unlike in Shadow Empires where it just like bloop, and just moves instantly. I want them to be able to move on the map. I'm gonna rename handle input into handle keyboard input. And then we're gonna make another one. Public void handle mouse input. Now the question is, you have a keyboard state. Is there a mouse state? Yes, there is. So let's just steal these temporarily. There, and then here we want to say if previous mouse state dot, what do we have here? X button 1 left button. Left button what? It's a button state. What's this then? Is key down. Keyboard state. It's a button state. But the state doesn't contain anything. So you have to do like if left button equals button state dot pressed. Released. So here, this should just be if it is released and keyboard state. This is actually incorrect, but let's just see if we can get it to work. Mouse state. Left button equals button state pressed. Because it should be the opposite. And if it should be the opposite, we can just fix it instantly. And just there. Because it should... Generally speaking, when you do clicky things, it's not always true. But generally speaking, the click action happens on mouse up, not mouse down. But it depends a little bit. Hello, Grog. I'm just working on a little side project with hexagons and stuff. Some kind of grand strategy RPG thing. The idea. Now here, we need public vector 2 int selected hex. Public bool hex is selected equals false. So then here we now need to translate. Oh, yeah. I talked to a guy yesterday, or not yesterday, but the other day about this. So this is a pain in the ass. This is gonna take like all day, maybe. We'll see. I do have some code examples we can just pull from here. Has Robin considered cancellation of click if right click when LMB held? That's sometimes the case, yeah. Like if you have click to drag, then yeah, right clicking does usually do that. But it's actually not always the case. Like if you just left click on something normally and hold down the button and then right click, that usually doesn't cancel the click, I think. But it's also it's on a case by case basis. But it can feel really wrong if it instantly selects sometimes. But sometimes it can feel wrong if it doesn't. And I might be wrong about this in this case. In this scenario, clicking a hex might be better for it to select right away instead of on mouse up. But like for buttons, it's usually... Yeah, I don't know. Hello, Charles. But yeah, see, the annoying part here now is that selecting a hexagon isn't so easy. Because how do you do click detection to figure out that you're clicking on a specific hexagon? Because the hexagon looks fucking weird. So what's the math for clicking here? And it figuring out that, yeah, I'm clicking on the blue one. Yeah. Switching between caveman speak and T-tribe speak quickly confusion. I understand. I understand. So, what you can do, kind of, is you can separate everything into shit. Something like this, right? That way you have square bits of your hexagons. Are these hexagons having all equal sides? No. And the angles aren't correct for like any real math. Because I have to adhere to what works in regards to pixel art. So the angles aren't exact, I think. Right, because I think the angles are supposed to be 60 degrees. Is that how this works out? You have 6 60-degree angles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then that adds up to 360 degrees. But my angles are... I mean, I actually don't really know exactly. Like, the angle of this line here is 26.6 degrees. But what exactly does that mean? How do you know what the degree is? Like, this is minus 90. This is plus 26. Is that a 63-degree angle? Is that how it works? Minus 152. Minus 259. I genuinely don't know how to figure out what the angle of this is. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Anyway. The way you can do this is that you split the hexagon up into this segment. And that way, you can keep doing that. You can do it like this, right? You have this segment. And then here, you have this segment. That way you can see that the lower certain percentage of it here is all just squares. So this is free to calculate, really. Because here, if it falls within this space, then you know that you clicked on this or this or this or whatever. And then when it falls up here, you have to do annoying things. Now here you have to just make some kind of system that lets you determine like where are you actually clicking, right? And so you can split this into this. That way you have two triangles. And then you can split the triangle into two. And then you can do like basically some basic math to figure out like which side are you on here. And then you can determine which one you've clicked on. Another solution I've seen is that they use radius and radians and stuff, but I think that really only works if you have proper hexagons. And you can only do that in like 3D or more high resolution. Yeah, you could do something like this, I suppose, but I think when you're doing pixel art, anything that you do with this here is probably gonna be inaccurate. Honestly, don't really know what you would do here. But yeah, the world is basically like the hexagons are 64 times 64, but the world is actually 64 times 48 per Y because of the overlap, right? So translating this to 64 or that's where you should start, I think. Just separating or just translating the mouse coordinate to a value around like that, kind of. So without looking at some other people's code, I want to try doing this. And it's basically gonna be like we're gonna get the position, which is a point. What the fuck is a point? Oh, the point is a vector. Hold on. Point. Like that. The point is actually the vector 2 int, I think. Yeah. If like vector 2, 1, 1, the normalized magnitude would make an arc from all the points between 1, 0 and 0, 1, so like a circle, but I don't think it would work to normalize 2, 1. No, it works. I mean, the entire point of normalization is so that you get a value from 0 to 1. You can normalize any value. It just changes, like, trigonometry unit circle. I mean, I'm not really sure what you mean. It's like 2, 1 is a point, right? While a normalized vector is a direction. That's what you're doing, like... Yeah. It creates a direction from 0 towards the point. That's the purpose of normalization. And that way you can take a point and you can translate it to a direction that you can then apply a magnitude to get a point. So like 1, 1, if you have a vector that's 1, 1 and one that's 2, 2, they will both have the same normalization value because it's a direction towards those. You just lose the magnitude. I'm thinking like a line draw from 0 to 1 is longer than 1 unit. Yeah. That's true. And that's why if you normalize 1, 1, you get 0 0.7, 0 0.7, because it's just a direction. But yeah, so... Hello, Dalen, how's it going? We basically now have to translate this into... I don't really know what we're doing here, so... Vector 2 int x position equals mouse position. Let's see, new vector 2 int. Yes, we're coding. Divided by 48. Like a line drawn towards 105, but with the length of 1 unit. I don't know if one... Yeah, 105 isn't a direction. It's a point. So you have to normalize that to get a direction. And then you can draw a line towards that using a certain magnitude. But a magnitude of 1 isn't, like, it's not really... doesn't really work that way. I honestly, I have no idea what you're talking about right now, Charles. An arc from 1, 0 to 001 and every point along that arc. Like, what are we doing right now? Are we drawing a circle from point A to point B? Because now you're talking like going from here to here. Oh no, well, here to here, rather. Now I'm in MonoGame space, then it would be 2 down. But yeah. So now we're getting hex position. The hex position is going to be like an index. And then we have to determine the internal position. So then we have to say, this is actually like hex index or something. So like vector 2 int hex internal position equals mouse position minus hex position times, we have to do this, new vector 2 int, actually let's do this, vector 2 int hex size equals new vector 2 int 6448. That way we can just take mouse position divided by hex size. No, we can't. Vector 2 doesn't have division. Really? No, I haven't implemented division. Okay. Well, let's do that then. Division. We want to have value 1. Value 2. This one is a little scary because it's like, okay, what if we're dividing by 0, but value 1 x. We're gonna return new vector 2 int value 1 divided by value 2 value 1 divided by value 2. No, this is just 2. There, now that works. And then the internal position is X position times hex size. I don't have minus? What the fuck? We have plus. Okay. There we go. Now we can subtract. Depending on what mouse position is. I kind of want to do debug dot right mouse position. Where is the console? God. Stop. I don't even know what this is. Terminal? No. output. I think it's an output. However, we're not actually we're not calling this at all. Well, does it need a break line or what was that? You need to manually type in a new line? Apparently you do. So mouse position, okay. So we then print a hex internal position. It's almost correct. Except it's not that simple. If hex position dot y modulo 2 equals 0, else then we'll set it to this. Otherwise we're gonna set it to plus new vector to int hex size dot x divided by 2 0. Does that make sense? No. I don't think we should subtract either, but actually maybe subtracting was correct. Okay, so here it starts at 0. And here it's now at negative 32. Because this is just the mouse position, and then hex position times hex size. The hex position basically is it needs to be shifted to the right. Oh boy. Why is this so hard? I feel like it should be just as simple as this. Why is it not? It kind of is. But now, when it reaches half of the hex, it goes over to negative. Does it need to calculate the space outside the hexagons? Not exactly. It just needs to offset the value. It needs to do something like this. Like, we set the hex position here, and if the hex position Y is odd, we then need to change the hex position value to mouse position dot x minus 32 I think. And maybe that's good. No. We were dividing that, I think. But now this is at 38. Well, that's not correct. Hold on. I think that works. Let's see. Let's call this one internal position, just so that it makes more sense. I see the space outside the hexagons are also inherently hex shaped. Well, yeah. So here we now have internal position. That's correct. Once you go past the tip of the blue one here, the internal position shifts from 53 to 20, which is correct. And then as we go down, it shifts to 56, 20. Yeah, okay, that's correct. We have correct coordinates now. And the Y is correct up to there. Okay. So what we need to do now is we just say, because Y only goes down to, or it goes up to 48. Wait. It goes down to 47 and then over to 0. So what we can say is, if Y is less than what? Okay, so this is 47. So that means that if the value is less than 16, let's do, if Y is greater than 15, but it's hex internal position dot Y is greater than 15. then we can select that hex. But we also need to have the correct index. And what is that? Hex position. Let's debug hex index, call it hex index. That's not correct at all. It should be, right? No, it's hex position, not internal position. So this is index 0. 1, 2. 0, 1. And this hex index is 0, 1, all the way over to here, where it's 1. The index is correct. Okay. Then let's selected hex. Selected hex equals hex position. Right? And then we'll also say hex is selected equals true. Then we go to the grid matrix and we'll say we'll copy this and then we'll say if main controller dot hex is selected, then we're going to draw the hexagon list. Tile selection text. And the position is let's set vector 3 int selected position equals main controller dot access dot selected hex. Vector 2. And then here we exchange all of the eyes for that. And then we render. We can now click, but it's only half done. we can only click on the guaranteed spot. If we click anywhere in between here, it doesn't work. But this does work accurately. Right now, we can select hexes. So then the issue is figuring out how to select. Right, because here now we have X internal position greater than 15, else I have a pretty simple solution to this, I think. Kind of. But first I'll be right back. So basically, we're just gonna count pixels. I think that's the easiest way to do this. So first what we have to do is we just have to say if x internal position dot x is less than 32, then we'll do some bullshit here. And basically what we're gonna say is if x internal position dot y so now it's from 0 to 15. If y is less than x internal position dot x modulo 32 divided by 2. It's not quite exactly like that, but it's very close. It needs like a minus somewhere. So basically, Basically, when x is 0, select top left. I think this needs to be +1, maybe. And then the modulo might need to be different. But I'm not sure. It might need to be like 33 instead. 16 minus that. So what that means is that if x equals 0, then the value is 16, because it's 0 plus 1 divided by 2, right? 0 plus 1 divided by 2 equals 0. So 16 minus 0 is 16. And then we're checking for below 16. And then when x equals 1, it's gonna be one plus 1 divided by 2 equals 1. Leads to 16 minus 1 equals 15. So if y is less than 15, we select the top, right? Because that means it's here. And now we've created this stairway thing going all the way up here. So then, if this is true, that means that selected hex equals hex position minus new vector 2 int zero 1. Is that true? Let's try it. I can select this one now on that angle. But like, I can't select here. Yeah, okay. So this works now. Now we just need the other side. And then the math needs to be like reversed. Or do we just do it like this? We just flip it around like this. Is this enough? And then this needs to be X position. -1. You know what? I'm just gonna do this. Selected hex. So x plus equals 1. Selected x dot y minus 1. Is that it? Not quite. No, because we're using modulo on the internal position, so the internal position is always below 32. Yeah, kind of what I was expecting. It's just flipped. So It needs to be 16 minus. I think. Yeah. Oh, it's correct. But, as I expected, there's an error there. And I think this needs to be... potentially needs to be 33, because we're adding a value here. Or... we can just add it here. And I think it should be the same here, actually. Basically, we had to flip it here by doing this, because what I'm doing is I'm subtracting the x value from the y value in a way where we are dividing the x value, because the x value goes from 0 to 32, while the y goes from 0 to 16, or it's actually 0 to 31 and 0 to 15, but it's 32 and 16 values. So as we divide the x, we get a value of 16 there as well, or a range of 16. And then I offset it by 1, because it looks like this, right? Like the first step only has 1. And it's the same thing here. The first step only has 1. But it's a little different in each direction, so we'll see if I maybe need to subtract by 1 or add by 1. Because here... we'll see. We have to do some specialized testing there. And in the other direction, we have to flip it. So here we're checking if we're subtracting the x from 16, which means that at the left side it's 16, and it then goes down to 0. While here it needs to start at 0 and go down to 16. So we have to start at 16 and then we subtract 16 minus the x. So when x is 0, we're actually subtracting 16 from 16. That way you flip it. And ideally, I would like the screen to be larger. Where is that set up? Is it in here? Or is it just a default? Let me see. Game 1. Window size in MonoGame. Graphics, new device manager. Graphics dot preferred back buffer width equals, I don't know what it is set to right now, but let's try this. I don't think this... What do we have in graphics? Graphics dot... Okay, it's kind of simple. How does it look if we set it to 1080p? And... Okay, let's see here. Graphics dot hardware mode switch equals false. Graphics is full screen equals true. Right, and then we have everything here, right? But now the issue is that the scaling is incorrect, right? So what we need to do is we need a public float draw scaling. And then we have to do something like public int window width equals 1920, public int window size equal window height equals 1080, public int what is it called? It's called viewport. Let's call it viewport width equals 960, public int viewport height equals 540. I just googled what a back buffer is. Yeah, I don't know what a back buffer is either. And then here we have to say draw scaling equals window height divided by viewport height. But they need to be floats. And then in the draw call, Grid matrix dot draw. So we're drawing texture. Are there more overloads here? Effects, layer depth, color. I think we need to do this version. We can't just draw at a position. We need to draw at a rectangle. And the width is 64 and 64, right? If we do that, it should draw. It should draw normally now. Yes. So this needs to be multiplied by the game dot draw scaling needs to be done in the position too, apparently. Hmm. Oh, I didn't copy the whole thing. Can you multiply 2 rects? No. What about... rectangle.scale doesn't exist. I'm just trying to scale up the graphics. But it's being weird. What if we do debug dot right raw scaling let's just print that once in the beginning here. Debug using system.diagnostics. Draw scaling 2. That should be correct. Is it like D7? I don't remember. Maybe it's F. .00000. So yeah, it should be correct. But as you can see, we're getting like seams between all of the hexes. And that's incorrect, right? And I'm scaling it up. Is it putting gaps between them or just selecting small areas? I think it's a rounding error. It's Didn't fix it. It's supposed to draw it from like 0 to 63 based on like the position gets scaled up using the draw scaling, and the size where it should draw is also scaled up using the draw scaling, and the draw scaling is 2, so it should be an easy multiplication, but for whatever reason it's just not working. Like if you see here now, there are no gaps when we are rendering at this size. .1.f, there are gaps. 1.5f. 4x. You can see the gaps don't really become larger. They just begin to exist, which means that there is a minor like let me test something. Is it this kind of issue? I don't feel like it should be. Would the selector function need to reference the draw scale? Every single thing that draws needs to reference the draw scale, yeah. Let me try changing this to something like this. Okay. I don't feel like this would really have this kind of issue. I was not prepared to run into this problem this early. This is basically called edge bleed. So basically, what's happening is that the way textures work is that this texture starts at show me. Okay, here. This texture starts at 2560 and it goes until 3200. The issue is that textures, because it ends and it begins at the 0x or the 0, yeah, when you get to like the next x value, it's very easy that the two bleed into each other, so that the texture actually goes from if you use normalized values, it goes from 0 to 1, but it actually goes from 0 to 0.99999999999999999. And when you reach that point, when you're at the far end and you're rendering there, it's just as easy that you trip over into 0.0000000001 of the next nearby texture. So what you can do to solve that is you have padding, so you have an extra transparent pixel in between here. I would prefer not having to do that. But solutions such as minus 0.00001. Fucking stupid. I'm really weirded out that it's doing that. I'm not 100% convinced that it is what's happening. But that's a very common issue. 1 second. There. Like, I wouldn't expect run speed to require a check on draw scale. Seems like draw scale shouldn't be affecting a function. No, it shouldn't, but anything that... It's not that it's affecting the position. It's affecting the position on the screen. So... because we scale everything up, that means that if your object is standing on position 10 normally, it now takes 20 pixels to arrive at position 10. So that's why you have to like kind of hijack the position and multiply it by the draw scale so it gets shifted over to the actual 10. If that makes sense. Okay, here they have another solution. Let's try that. Let's undo all of this garbage. No draw scaling. Then we go back to game, and we're gonna say public matrix, scale matrix. Scale matrix equals new matrix. No. Scale matrix equals matrix dot create scale. Draw scale. Draw scaling 1. And then in the draw call, you have a sprite batch begin can take transform matrix, scale matrix. That also didn't work. But I think it was better. What if we do this? This nets 4 error. All in game. We're not scaling anything here. Let's try shifting that back to position. Maybe it's the rectangle. No, it's still doing it. Okay. There's also a sampler state. Sampler state point. I think that might actually do something. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it was that the sampling was being done in an incorrect manner. Is this... Oh, okay, I was just... my monitor was dirty. Alright, there we go. So the sampler state was probably using linear clamp. Maybe anisotropic, but probably linear. Since we're using pixel art, it should be point. Because otherwise it tries to make it fuzzy. Yeah, okay. Now, does the logic work correctly? Not exactly. And the reason for that is because the mouse actually needs to utilize the draw scaling. So as we go to mouse input, the mouse.getState, mouse state.position, this needs to be multiplied by game 1 or game public static game 1 access. Game1.access.draw scaling. Are you kidding me? New point. They hate allowing to multiply things. Then this needs to be an integer. So does this. Excuse me? Oh, yeah. Game 1 needs to say access equals this. That's true. Oh. We're doing it the wrong way. This needs to be divided by the draw scaling. This is y. Okay. Now it works. I think it works. Everywhere. Like, I thought that there might be like a little seam. Oh, wait, I think we fixed that bug already. Okay. So we can click and we can select hexes now. So what do we do with that information? Is that enough for today? From here we could go any direction. Right. Moving the camera was the next step, really. And the camera is just gonna be a vector 2, basically. But I think we should make a camera component. Not a component, but like a script. System. Camera. And the camera should have a public vector 2. Internal position. It should have a public vector 2. What should I call it? Like pixel position. That's a good one. But the question is, how should we really get that? Just like this. Like that. And public. It doesn't need like a set, does it? I mean, maybe. It depends. Set position. Vector 2 position. No, don't build. Internal position equals position. I just don't know if we might need to make do something when the camera moves. So let's see if we can fix this like very quickly. I think we can implement a camera. Handle mouse input. Let's handle the mouse or the camera first. If previous mouse state dot middle button I kind of like being able to drag well, you're dragging, yeah, you are dragging the camera, but like dragging the world around with the left mouse button, but it does make it hard to implement other things like dragging, like drag selects and stuff. I don't know if I actually will have drag selects at all, and if I don't, I think I would rather have like you can move the world by dragging. But we'll see. Yeah, I mean, you can use the third mouse button as well, that works, but I like it when you can just do it with the left click. I think being able to drag the camera with left click when it's not necessary to have a drag function on left click is the way to go generally. Lots of laptop people don't have mouse 3, unfortunately. That's true. But they should buy a mouse. No, this is middle. And then if this is the case, then we need to have mouse state, previous mouse state dot position. Let's see. Vector 3 int. This is a point. Vector 3 int diff equals mouse state dot position minus previous. Are you shitting me? Dot point doesn't even have fucking subtraction. Oh no, never mind. It does. We just need to make this a point. Okay. My bad. My bad. I do want to have a vector 2 int here, I think. I could work with... I guess we could work with points and X and A vector 2s and stuff. I think it would be easier in general. However, if I just implement implicit conversions from my vector 2s to points and their vector 2s, I think it will be fine. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So it needs to be the other way around. Don't know why I thought it wasn't gonna be. So old position and new position. And then we have to say camera dot we didn't set up the camera here. So I want the camera to be in main controller, I think. Public camera. It's our camera. Camera equals new camera. Public camera. Internal position equals new vector 2 0 0. Then here we then have a diff, and then we say camera dot set position camera dot int let's say that this is a looks like that. And then we add a public vector 2 internal position. That way we have a getter. And we go here and we say internal position dot x plus diff camera dot internal position dot y plus diff dot y diff dot x. And we have a one set position there. We should have two set positions, one that takes an int, converts this to a vector 2. All right, it's, let's see. Let's say new vector 2 then. And then we go to grid matrix.draw and position needs to be position plus main controller dot access dot camera dot pixel position. Dot X. No. Vector 2. Are you serious? And then everywhere it says position here, we add the camera. And then we see how that turns out. We got a camera. It's going in the wrong directions though, but it works. I think I was actually right here. It should be like this. Yeah. Now it needs to be adjusted. By I think we can just adjust the camera read. Here, when you fetch the internal position, we can just modify it by game1.access.draw scaling. Come on. And same thing here, pixel position, multiply that. Let's see if that's enough. Nope. Because it needs to be divided. Think? Ah. Okay. Now it works. It lags behind quite a lot, though. I think that's normal. But now we can't select things properly. Still. It's because the selection doesn't have the camera adjustment to it. So here, mouse position is mouse position plus camera dot pixel position. Actually, maybe not. Let's do this. Let's make one called scaled pixel position. And then we have one that's just identical called pixel, you never know, pixel position that is unscaled. And this one here takes pixel position. Is that enough? It might be. No. In fact, it's moving in the opposite direction. It should be negative there, yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. But it should be scaled? Really? Okay. There we go. Now we can select stuff. It's not entirely accurate, however. It's bugged, I think. Or is it? Yeah, see here, when I click this one, it selects that one over there. Oh, is it actually a bug up here? Yeah, okay, it's a bug up here. Oh, okay. It has nothing to do with the camera. Alright, selecting the top left on an even row is bugged. And I think maybe we stop there. Pushed it a little bit, implementing camera. But it works. Now we can go anywhere we want from this, more or less. We have camera. I could implement zooming, because that might be something. It's just that zooming is kind of trash. So we have draw scaling here, right? So I'm just thinking how I would implement the zoom, because it's not that simple. Like, it is simple, but do I just update the scale matrix? No, because things are tied to the draw scaling, right? But the scale matrix does have to be updated, I think. Yes, it does. But yeah, the draw scaling needs to be updated in some fashion. But the issue is that I'm using the draw scaling to divide. So that means that any solution that we use to alter the draw scaling cannot allow it to reach 0. So either we clamp it, which is entirely possible. We can just clamp it, that's fine. And then it would be really easy. Or we do something else, but let's try just clamping it. Handle mouse input. If previous mouse state dot scroll wheel value does not equal 0, then we're gonna say game 1, game 1 dot access dot draw scaling equals math f dot clamp math.clamp. And then we have a min, let's say it's 0.5. And then we have a max, let's say it's 2. Then we should say game1 dot access dot draw scaling plus actually this should be 0, and then here this should be and mouse state does not equal 0. Then we should say draw scaling plus scroll wheel value times 0.1, perhaps. And then we also need to say game1.access.scale matrix equals matrix. Let's actually do this. We have create scale matrix. Public void set scale matrix. Scale matrix equals float value. And then here we say set scale matrix draw scaling. And then same thing here. We can say access.set scale matrix. We pass in the draw scaling. However, this needs to be negative. This doesn't do anything. Wait, returns cumulative scroll wheel values since the game's start. Oh. That's not right. It needs to be like a scroll wheel delta. Okay, so you need to do something like this. Scroll wheel value minus this does not equal 0. Then we have to say, actually, let's say int scroll delta equals this. It doesn't matter in which order here, I think. And so we need to use the scroll delta. And then we see if that does anything. Oh. It's massive. We can set this to like 3F just to test stuff. So yeah, now we can zoom. It's kind of shitty because I think here's what we want to do. I don't actually want to use the delta. I just want a sine. Math.sine. Roll sine. If scroll sine does not equal 0. Yes, that's better. But now we can change this to 1. And the reason for that is it's taking the mouse input from Windows, I assume. And Windows doesn't scroll like one line at a time. So I think that whenever it scrolls, it's actually like incrementing it by like 10. So we're actually getting a very large differential here every time. It's not like 1 only. It might be, but it seems like it's not. Because the fact that I'm using the sine, and the sine, if you don't know, is if the value is positive, the sign is 1. If the value is negative, the sign is -1. So we're just returning 1 and -1 now. And then I just multiplied the 1 and -1 by a float value that we're just applying to the zoom. But you can see why zoom is kind of bad in general. See, you have some rendering issues here now and then. So it's not as simple as that. But we have implemented it, so that's kind of fun. But I think what you have to do is basically pick... You can't just increment it by a float like this. You have to basically... Unless you figure out a way to solve this rendering issue in the first place, so that it doesn't happen at all, then you should select an amount, like a bunch of different zoom values that are tested. And then you actually just increment between those zoom levels, so that you never end up at like a weird float value. You just always go to a specific value. So you can create like 10 approved zoom values and then you increment through them. Something like that. But I just wanted to try to get it to work and see. Anyway, we'll stop there. I am gonna go for a walk, I think, and then we'll play some more Windrose, I believe. Yeah, we made good progress. Does clicking work when you zoom out? Yeah. Does. So next time we do something, which might be tomorrow, I'm not sure, we'll see. There's tons of different things we could do. We could work a little bit more on making this work properly, because I do think zooming could be good. But since it's pixel art, we might just have one, like, you can zoom in and you can zoom out, and then there are only 2 zoom levels, but we'll see, we'll see. Because it's an issue with the art that it'll break. With if you can zoom any way you want, it'll look like shit. But we can also start implementing just like tile data, and we can write out some stuff on the screen that says like this tile contains this and that. We can implement a player character that we can move around, but moving him around will be really hard because it would mean creating pathfinding. And hexagonal pathfinding sounds like a pain in the ass, if I'm gonna be honest. But we'll see. There are some ways to do it. For example, each tile could have connections to its neighbors. Because you might not want an object to be able to exit like in this direction because there's something here that is like an illegal entry. So you could say, like, let's say this is a city. Maybe the city only has two exits. And you can only exit in these 2 directions from the city because otherwise there are gates. That way you might want the tile to have 6 exits, and then you just say like which one is true, which one is false. Or you can say, you know, which index it connects to. That way you don't have to do any real math like all the time to figure out which one it is, but the math isn't very hard, so it doesn't really matter. And then you could also have I think the index for each exit is the correct way to go. Because that way you can be like, yeah, it's water here. And then you can just make a check against your unit and be like, okay, does it have the ability to access water? No, yes. Same thing with mountains and stuff. And we'll see what I do. I think I'm gonna make roads be something that matters a lot more. Like, for example, if you have infantry can move through forest. Vehicles can't move through forests. Like, they just can't. You need a road. Maybe if it's like light forest, you might be able to move through it at significant speed penalties with vehicles, but generally speaking, moving through a forest is just not something that you do with vehicles. It's kind of ridiculous unless there's a road. So yeah, and building roads is kind of a pain in the ass. It's entirely doable though. You can do it in like maybe like a week or something, depending on how far you need to go. Because you need to chop down trees, deroot, and then make a road, which isn't necessarily that easy without it just turning into sludge. But yeah, we'll start messing around with more game mechanic stuff soon. I think moving a unit around might be something we do kinda later. We'll see. Because just with this, we could create a character and start creating like events, like an event system and stuff like that. But unfortunately, I need to make UI and a level editor. So we'll see. Anyway, until next time, thanks for hanging. Have a good day. Bye bye.